All right, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. The podcast is now called Blueprint. You'll notice this is the first big episode of Blueprint with Riley Brown, the homie, AI extraordinaire content. Very excited for this one. I think just to tee it off, I don't want to spend a ton of time on like background and backstory, but I am curious. You started content, I think like 18 months to 2 years ago-ish during that first big wave. You were the biggest AI creator by far, grew the fastest. I think you're like, when I think AI content, I think you. And I want to know like what prompted you to get into making content in the first place, and kind of walk me through those early months of like what you were thinking.
Yeah. So, I guess since I've started like uploading videos, I think it's been like around 16 months. So not quite a year and a half. But there was, I would say, a 6-month preparation period where I decided I wanted to create content. In a previous job, I was working in kind of the metaverse space, and I was very interested in kind of virtual reality and I've just been obsessed with like new technology. That's what I've spent the last like 2.5 years on. And I ended up in a Discord channel and some guy messaged me. I forget his name, but like I never knew him in real life, but he messaged me. He's like, dude, you have to try Midjourney. And this is 5 or 6 months before ChatGPT came out. So AI was only just like a little thing I was interested in. And I remember trying Midjourney, and I typed in, I think like rodent king of cheese, and it created this like rodent I'll never forget this image because it was so bad, but it was the most like insane experience I've ever had. It was like this rodent with a piece of cheese on his sword. And I messaged him back on Discord. I was like, what is that? Like where does it pull these images from? He's like, no, it generates them. And then that's when I started looking into DALL-E 2. And then I started using DALL-E 2. And I became obsessed with AI images and just AI. I just started researching AI, everything. And I'd already been thinking about wanting to be a creator, because one of my previous jobs, I was actually like recruiting creators, and we were actually like paying creators to talk about certain things. And I'm like, oh, I could do this. And so then I'm like, you know what? This AI thing seems cool. I'm going to learn everything I can about this, as well as learn Premiere Pro, learn how to video edit. And then I spent 4 months just rapid fire. I think you had a similar story. You were talking about that period where the returns on learning Premiere are just insane, going from like not knowing anything about it to like being pretty decent at it. Like,
yeah, exactly.
The level of output you could get from that increase is just insane. If you're a creator, like learn Premiere Pro. It's the first thing you should learn. And ChatGPT came out. By the time ChatGPT came out, I had already been beta testing different language models and using AI in like Playground. At the time, it was like GPT-2 or GPT-3 before ChatGPT. The second it launched, I had already understood what ChatGPT was before anyone else knew what it was. So my videos were getting like 1 million views, all of them. Literally all of them, no matter what. Like as long as I had a decent hook and I was editing, I was making 1 video a day. They were like 5 minutes long. That's why I wasn't uploading to Instagram at the time. It was just TikTok. And I decided to only focus on TikTok and just post 1 video every day that dove into something new about ChatGPT. And I went from 0 to 100,000 followers in 2 weeks. And then Midjourney came out about a month later. And then I became obsessed with that. And then I just started using every single tool that came out. I think my subscriptions now, I get a lot of tools for free, and my monthly subscriptions are like $1,200. It's insane. Yeah. So I'm using like every single tool that comes out. I'm using it, testing it, and I'm basically just trying to create content. And now I'm kind of more focused on the creative AI tools and how people can use them to basically communicate and create content. And so that's kind of what I'm working on now.
A few like really fascinating things about that. So I didn't realize that you had like a depth in AI understanding before, because I think like ChatGPT was, let's say, like the beginning of the consumer being aware of it wave, but there was stuff happening before. And so you were like studying it, playing with it, learning it, understanding it before. And so that's like a really good takeaway, I think, for creators is if you're going to surf a wave, it's super helpful to have like a baseline understanding before the wave gets big, so that as soon as it starts getting consumer applicable, which like we'll say ChatGPT, and then there was a cascade of things, you already had this knowledge where you could communicate about these ideas like really quickly. I think the first video I saw of yours that went, you probably had ones that went super viral before, but the first one I saw of yours that went crazy was when you were like, I wish this existed in high school. And you were talking about just like, I think basic ChatGPT stuff. Like you were just demoing it for the first time.
That was the first video I uploaded to TikTok. 10.6 million views on that video.
Yeah,
and
was wild.
It was the hook. I remember 2 weeks before I posted that, I saw a video and someone said, where was this when I was in college? And I forget what the video was about, but I'm like, oh, I like that hook. And I just kind of really I spent time focusing on like that first initial thing. And I just used it in the video. I was like, where was this when I was in high school? And then I went straight into using this thing that was called ChatGPT to write an essay on To Kill a Mockingbird. And it got 10.6 million views.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So you basically premeditated wanting to be a creator though, you said, like before you jumped into it. And I'm curious, what were the factors or like facets of being a creator that attracted you to it? Arguably, like before you even knew AI was the fit, I'm guessing you're like being a creator makes sense for these reasons. And then it so happened that like the serendipity of it, you discovering AI, that's how you channeled in.
I by no means want to be a creator, quote unquote. I look for opportunities that sound interesting to me. I'm always trying to set up my life so that I can test out different things. And creating content, to me, like my thesis on creating content is that everyone in a way is a content creator. Even if you don't use any social media, creating a resume is creating content. And I'm realizing now, I used to not understand why someone like Elon would buy Twitter or Jeff Bezos bought the Wall Street Journal. But I'm realizing now that like being able to communicate at scale with the world sets yourself up for basically everything. Opportunities. And I think you've realized this. I would assume that you've realized this since you started creating content, that opportunities skyrocket. The ability to make money skyrockets when you're a content creator within a certain niche that has like money flowing into it. And so my main priority is not necessarily being a content creator. Like right now, I'm thinking more from the business side, and I will continue to make content as long as that it serves my goals. And so like, I think a lot of people look into content creation as its own niche, and that's fine. But like, is it my end goal? By no means. Like if I found another opportunity that I could turn content into, maybe I just go full-time community, or maybe I start, I've just always found it better to kind of reject the labels that people put around things, because I think it creates confines around like what you can do, like what you can create. And so being a creator, I feel like puts a lot of limitations on people. I don't know if this answers your question directly, but I by no means was it like an ideological thing. Like I want to be a creator. Never once did I think that. I thought, oh man, AI is going to be massive. There's going to be a huge demand for education and actually understanding what the hell is going on in AI. I'm going to fill this and see what happens from there. And the opportunities from being a creator, because I am a creator, have been so astronomical that I don't see myself going anywhere because it's such a good opportunity.
Yeah. Said another way, potentially, like being a creator, people look at it as the objective, but it's really not the objective. It's just the vehicle. Like it's just the way you get the message out. And you like, yeah, I'm the same way. Creator is like, it's not a job I wanted. It's the means to an end, or the necessary means to get attention at scale, and getting attention at scale unlocks everything, so we both are super aligned in that. You mentioned your goals. I'm curious because part of what I want to cover with like the blueprint format is, what are your goals now and how have those changed since, let's say, that initial like discovered fire moment, that first video, you got 10 million views. When that happened, because I had a similar moment early on where I was like, whoa, everything makes sense now. Like I can flip a switch and at my desk, I can now access 10 million eyes, and I can like persuade them to do X or deliver a message Y, right? That you start to like make these connections and predict or project where things could go. Talk about like your goals and how they have evolved over this 16 months.
Yes. So first, to address that initial viral moment, I think there's nothing like it in the real world. There's nothing like the feeling of going viral and getting 10 million views. I think it can be so destructive to people because of the addiction that it immediately creates inside. Like I remember going viral, and then I was making content about AI for a month, and I was going viral 80 to 8 times out of 10. I was just throwing out content and it was just going viral just because no one else could educate anyone on it because it was such a new thing. And then as soon as competition started coming in, other people were making content, it wasn't as easy. And then to go from 1 million views every time to 40,000, 50,000, there's this like ego, this thing that builds inside of you that like I can't explain, and I think every big creator has felt it. I've talked to so many creators, they feel this void, this like
it's a self-worth gap.
Yes, and I think Chamath Palapati, or however you pronounce his last name, said like he was like it's brittle popularity. That's what social media is, and I agree with that. Yeah. And so that's why like a lot of my goals and a lot of what I've tried to do over the last year is optimize less and less for the dopamine you get from views, to the point where I don't even have social media on my phone a lot of the time. And all my engagement I batch all my comment engagement so that like every time I go to social media, I know that I'm just responding to comments. I only check my views on my videos once per week, and it's on a spreadsheet. Like I have it automatically populate. I don't go and check my views anymore because it can be so destructive. So I just wanted to get that part out, the dopamine side, because a lot of me wants to say that it, like what you just said, where it was just like, oh my God, I can reach all these eyeballs. But deep down, like the feeling is more like, oh, I'm the shit. I'm making content. People love me, blah, blah, blah. Like, and it deep down, I think a lot of people, no matter who you are, I feel like Elon Musk suffers from the same thing where like he gets all these hype men, and it's human nature, in my opinion. So that's one thing. I'm trying to move away from that as much as possible and kind of move into like, okay, what do people want? How do I provide value? So like from like a philosophical level, it's like literally what put me in the position was me realizing that there's going to be people with a demand to learn. And I tried to fill it as quickly as possible in a way that like satisfies my curiosities. Like if I ever got to a point where I was talking about something I didn't like, I don't want to be there, because honestly, right now, there's so much opportunity for me that I can talk about things that are both providing value to me. I'm learning and I'm teaching other people. So that's goal number one, is like, I want to be learning and rapidly learning new things and improving my skill set and teaching people how to kind of get to that point, which I think is like the ultimate creator business model right now, is just be ahead of the curve, help people get there, and then continue moving along. I think too many creators stop where they are, get on a pedestal, right? Like, I'm the shit, I know everything. And then flood these like courses to get where they are. And then it's like, where do you go from there? Now you spent 9 months to a year on that, and now everyone else kept going. Like, and you're now, you have to catch up. So you either just have to keep selling the same course, and eventually it becomes worthless because, so.
Yeah, it gets commoditized to zero.
Yeah. And so that was my plan, was to kind of, just do that publicly as possible without worrying about money for 6 months. And I was luckily in a position where I could do that. Okay, sorry, I'm taking really long ways.
But that's there's a good framework in there, right? Which this is like a nugget. You're saying, which I totally agree with this. Most people, what they do is they take a space, they sprint to the edge, they plant at the edge, and they like sell back. But then the edge keeps moving and they stay where they initially planted. And so at some point they become not on the edge anymore. Like they're just mainstream, right? Because as mainstream catches up, they're planted on the edge. What you're doing, which is the right way to approach an emerging space, is you sprint to the edge, you look back, you teach back for a while, like a week or two, and then you keep going with the edge. You keep going out and out and out. So you're always on the edge. There will always be new companies, new money on the edges that are trying to educate people back. And so that's like a limitless pipeline of opportunity.
Yes. Honestly, that's actually a really good, I definitely don't think it's a week at a time. Like my goal is to stay on the edge. And people ask me like, oh, like how much time does it take to be a content creator? I spend 5 to 10% of my time creating content, which is why I think my content is going to win long term, because I actually have nuanced, interesting takes, because I'm in Twitter. I'm talking to people as many people as possible. trying to learn to stay on the edge. Like, where is this going? And you develop this like intuition whenever you spend enough time. Like if you spend it all day, every day, my brother watches sports all day long. He loves sports and he works in sports. His life is awesome. And he understands basketball so well. And he works in the industry too, that he understands it so well. He's developed an intuition like, no, this team's not going to win. This team's not going to win, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Where I don't watch sports. So like, I don't understand any of that stuff. But when you spend enough time in any subculture, which is AI, like you develop this like intuition of where things are going. And I've noticed that the more I'm in the scene, in the trenches, talking to the right people, the more I'm developing this intuition about where the space is going to go. And I love it. Like I've tried to think about like, okay, I need to create a course now. I need to do all this stuff. And then every time I like try to pause and I think about it, my whole life falls out of balance because I'm no longer pushing the edge. Luckily, I'm not going to lie. I wanted to start a business earlier, but the sponsorship deals over the last 3 months have gotten so good that like, I can't believe this is what I do for a living. Like as soon as I want to learn more about a tool, I reach out to the CEO. 9 times out of 10, I will get a meeting with the founders of the tool. And I get to talk to them directly and they'll send me tricks. Like I literally went to LA last week and I talked to very powerful people in the music industry about AI tools, about AI music. And I can't even say, legally can't even say any more than that, but I can't describe how fun my professional life is. Like I am at peak happiness in terms of like fun. What I'm doing with my career. It's so interesting to me. Genuinely.
That's dope. I want to get into the monetization side because, well, we'll get into it in a second. One follow-up question on what you were saying before. I think a lot of people, so your mix of time seems super healthy and fun, which is, like you said, you spend 5 to 10% of your time actually making the content. The majority of the other time is formulating hypotheses, testing things, running at your curiosity, and then like you can bring it back. What is the workflow and or team that you've put in place to allow you to only have to spend 10% and still get videos out consistently? Because this is a thing I need to work on because I spend a lot of my time I probably over edit. My shit's way too, it's not necessary. Like of the 80-20, I'm spending way too much time on the 20. So you figure this out. Walk me through like the workflow and the team.
Yeah. I mean, I look at your videos and they are significantly higher quality if you like you were just shown
or whatever.
Editing quality, you pay attention to. I know this because I consume all your content. Like I genuinely love your perspectives. I follow you on Twitter. I read your blueprint. You have a very, very systematic way of thinking about things, which I appreciate. One of the things you talked about, two things is visual packaging, and then I guess you could call it voice cadence. You've talked about that before. Like I forget how you worded it. It's like music or something like along those lines, right? You tweeted something like that.
Yeah, your voice is like almost like an instrument. Like rhythmically, there's like a pattern or like a cadence to the way the way people hear.
And when I watch your videos, I can see it. Like I can actually see the work you're putting in to make it sound audibly beautiful and like it flows, and you have very like you have good build-ups. You do like build-ups and drop-ins. I noticed that in your videos. I don't know what they're called technically. I don't do any of that shit. I literally I use one of my favorite skills that I've gotten good at is web clipping. And I've tried all of the best web clippers. People have used them. Like you can use Notion as a web clipper. You can use something like Readwise, MyMind. And I've settled on the simplest one that is like with the least amount of features because it's the most beautiful, and it's called MyMind. And it allows you, whether you're on your phone, whether you take a screenshot, basically anything you see on any of your screens, you can save it to your mind. And what this allows me to do is it allows me to turn my scrolling time or the time that I'm like exploring on the internet, and it allows me to save it, and then you can add notes to it. And so what I'll do is every time I save, like every day, like twice a day, like around lunchtime and at the end of the day, I'll go through all the things that I saved. and I will power write a script, just like a outline, basically, like a bulleted list of like, if I were to make a video on this, what would it be? And I've gotten to the point where I can write it in 2 minutes. I don't use any AI. I tried to automate this process. Every time you try and over automate, you become a soulless human being, and you just have to
lose the sauce.
You lose the sauce. So you and then by writing all the time and basically annotating your inputs, which I think is so healthy. Like that is such a healthy
like
process.
Drop your
no matter
thoughts
what you're
in the
doing.
moment.
Yeah, yes. Drop your thoughts in the moment and do a reflection after. Like so much of what we do is just blind intake. I don't care if you're a creator or not. It's healthy regardless to like develop a worldview. But if you're just scrolling social media, liking some shit, I don't like tweets or Instagram posts or anything. I just save them to my mind. And then every day at the end of the day, I'll go through all of them and annotate them. And that allows you to actually like, okay, like what do I think about this thing? And then you can actually export all that data. And so like I think once GPT-5 comes out, it'll be very interesting to export all that data. And then you can actually create a chatbot on what you think about all the things, which is a totally different story. But what that does is it allows me to look at it. And then I look at all my annotations for the day, because you can filter by like the ones you've saved today. Be like, okay, which one should I make a video on? This one? Okay. Sometimes I'll pull up the video. I got a green screen right here. Like I'll throw it up and I'll just record a video. Like, and I won't even think about it.
But the key is you just rip it. Like you have the script and you record it, but the editing it, like you don't spend that much time editing it, right? It's like pretty quick.
Yeah. I mean, I remove the green screen. I throw it. So I do have an editor. So I have multiple types of videos. Helpful. So there's certain types of videos that I make with my editor, and there's certain ones that I just do myself. If it's a video that I'm vibing with, that I'm like feeling the creative energy, I realize that like the creative energy needs to come from like what I'm doing, or like it's like a message I want to get across. I don't necessarily need to like over edit. The editing that I have put a lot of emphasis on is just removing all gaps that are unnecessary. I think that's the main thing. If you were to be a creator, a fresh creator, like if you want to start out in content creation, I would focus on the first 5 seconds having a hook that directly addresses the main point of what you're talking about, and showing something on the screen that backs that up. So you want a visual, I call it a visual hook. So you want that 5-second visual hook, and then you do like a setup. Like I think of it like one sentence saying, this is how to get started. And so that basically indicates that you just did a visual hook, maybe like this tool is going to change everything. This is how you use it, right? And then also you might want to add a sentence in like why it matters. So it's like visual hook, and you want to incorporate why it matters to a large group of people. And then I'm going to explain it, and then immediately start explaining it with no gaps in between anything, just like straight to the sauce. Or like if it's news, it's like news, visual hook, like find the image of the news, because usually there's videos with news, and find like the 3 seconds of a video that like people will be triggered by. They'll know
some emotional response.
Right. And then, but it also should explain kind of the whole video. And then you want to have a good caption at the beginning. So it's like the 5 seconds of like understanding why this would matter to a lot of people. And then just explain it. Explain why it matters, and then ask people to follow you at the end. So many people don't ask people to follow at the end. I was actually comparing my TikTok with someone else's data, and they never asked people to follow. They had like 7 to 8 times as many views as I did, and like 4 times as many likes. I had like 4 times the amount of followers, just because every video I ask. I just say for more videos like this, follow for more. And you'll be surprised that the reason people don't follow you is not because they made a conscious decision not to follow you. They just forgot, you know?
Yeah. The reason, my logic for not asking was, I feel like I think I probably should ask. I write it in my script all the time and I record it, and then I end up cutting it at the end. And my reason is because if I have you in a trance watching the video, I'll break that trance as soon as I leave an ask. And like my perception was, if I break the trance and the last thing you hear is not like a value statement, it's more of me asking, you'll be like, and then like you'll just churn off. But I think that's just me getting in my own head. Like I think a lot of people forget, like exactly what you said. They just don't remember to follow.
Another thing, this is another thing, is cohesiveness of content. There's a guy, his name is Thunderkeck. You know who he is? Thunderkeck, no. He has 1.3 million followers on TikTok. And he like goes on the dark web. Like I love his content. It's hilarious. He like went on to the dark web and he like investigates all these things. And he has such good cohesiveness between his videos because he has such passion when he asks about it. He's like, guys, I'm going to try this next software at the end of this and just wait till you see this next week. And so it's not like follow for more content like this. Together. Yeah. And it's just like, you guys are going to want to see this. And then he'll start the next video. It's like, you guys remember what I did last week? And he'll have on like a picture of the site on the beginning. And it's just like, as soon as you start watching the video, you're like, oh, what did I miss? And then I'm like, oh, that's why this guy has 1.3 million, because he thinks it's all just episodes of his life. No production value. He just pulls his phone out, makes random stuff. It's so good. And he's like an Stanford football player, which makes him like, he's got levels to him. So like shout out to him if he's watching.
Yeah. Shout out Thunderkeck. We'll link him for sure. I really like, so the reason why these conversations are so valuable is because so like you identified some things that I do where you're like, it's like I notice it, it's really good. But it's possible that me doing that is like a waste of time because it doesn't actually convert on shares and follows or whatever the metrics are that we deem as important. It's possible that like I and other people listening are focused on the wrong things. And that's why it's really important to have these conversations, because your videos go just as viral as mine do. You're able to crank them out with less of your like time share on the content, but they still work. So what does that mean? That means the things that you're not spending time on don't matter. The things you are spending time on do matter. And like when you walk through it, the hook is key. The visual packaging, or like the visual hook combined with the text hook combined with the caption hook. So I just think it's so refreshing to have these conversations, because you get in your little bubble about like what you think matters, and you really don't know unless you look at the data or like compare to someone who is or isn't doing that. So I just wanted to call that out for people listening. Like there's a million ways to win. There isn't one set format. There's certain things that I think are really important, which is like spending the majority of your time on the first 2 to 5 seconds. That is unequivocally the most important. Same way Mr. Beast talks about thumbnails. If your thumbnail's shitty and no one clicks the video doesn't matter. In short form, there is no thumbnail. So like if your first 2 to 5 seconds aren't good, no one's going to watch the rest. Similar idea.
Yeah. I think there's certain creators where, but I also think if you found a way to automate it, I don't think it would necessarily be a waste of time. It also depends on what gets you going. Like if creating content that's like super polished and has your signature style, if that keeps you going, like just do it. It's just, but it always comes with trade-offs. There's an Instagram creator. His name is, I think it's like Carl Shakur. You know who that is?
Yeah. He's awesome.
Yeah. And it's just like his production value is so insane, but it's like almost all the people who watch his stuff, or a large part of his audience, are people who want his production value. And he's actually talking about production value. So the way that I see it is like, since I'm talking about AI, I want my AI skills to be like, oh man, this guy knows a lot about AI. Where he talks about production value. So production value makes sense. It just depends on who you are as a creator. You know what I'm saying?
100%. Okay, let's get into the monetization stuff. So I saw, basically, my theory is that on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs for a creator, being able to make money and afford doing it is like the number one thing that most people are thinking about, to a point. I'm sure artistic freedom and like creative expression and all these things, like these are fringe, these are like icing. The cake is, can I afford to pay my rent and keep doing this, or do I have to get a job? And I would like to not get a job, right? My guess is that's what most people, especially in the beginning, are thinking. So that's why in the blueprint, I try to be as transparent as possible with the money, exactly what I'm making, in what ways. I don't expect like everyone on the show to be that transparent if they don't want to, but I saw a tweet where you were talking to McKay, who's sick. I think he's like one of the best AI, like, I wouldn't even say thought leaders, but he bridges the perfect gap of like, he's actually building tools as like a developer, but like can communicate really well. He's like a really good in that middle ground. And I saw a tweet where you were like, I'm making 125K a month. Like, I'll show you how to do it or something. So that obviously is dope, and you're crushing it with the sponsor deals. I would love for you to break down as much as you're willing to, like, what are the buckets of different things you're doing? There's obviously sponsored videos. You're going to these conferences. Like, just break down as much as you can how that all works.
Okay, the first thing you said, McKay Wrigley, is the only reason I tweeted that was because I just think, I'm sure that McKay thinks like, he's just like, it's what I'm doing works on Twitter. People like it on Twitter. I just think that his content as is could crush every platform. And I know McKay, I would guess McKay's making $2,000 an hour for consulting. Like, McKay is easily, like, if he were to just go full-time content like what I was doing, he'd blow me out of the water. Like, that's probably nothing. Like, I think he's got like super high ambitions because McKay is so smart, and like, I wouldn't even consider him a thought leader. He's just a straight up builder. Yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there because I want to see him, because he's trying to build. He's starting what's called Takeoff, which is like an educational platform. And I just think like, if he were to blow up on Instagram and TikTok, like, his distribution would like be insane. I think he's going to make millions off of just that. So I just wanted to throw that one out there. In terms of my monetization, so in the last, like, since this new year started, there was just some shift in people wanting to work with me in terms of just like high quality sponsorships. So I was planning on releasing a community. And so I have a community now. And then I was thinking about integrating products into that. I've scrapped it because the sponsorship deals have been so good. I've worked with a healthcare company, and I got paid $100,000 for 1 day's work. Basically, I was
at a conference.
It was three posts, plus they posted 2 posts. They did all the editing for these videos, and
that's wild.
Yeah, and so I'm realizing now that
you were talking about selling products in the community. You mean like, you get paid by companies to promote the products to the community, or you build your own products?
I was thinking about building my own products and creating a course or creating something super valuable. I've wanted to put time into this. Obviously there's risks associated with that, right? But with sponsorships, I want to do sponsorships that I don't want it to like tarnish my brand. But right now I feel like these companies that I'm working with are just like companies that I'm actively using their product, or what they're doing is like so cool and so interesting that like I want to talk about it. And and the sponsorships have been so good that I just can't deviate from what I'm doing. Like, I just can't. It's a risk-free way to make more money than I've ever made by 10 times. Like it's insane how much more money I'm making than I made previously. Will it last forever? No, but my job is to stay on the edge. And so if this funds me and times 10 to stay on the edge of AI, I'm good, because I know that I can turn it into business when the sponsorship money dries out, or if the VCs leave and go to a new space, whatever. I'll be good. I'll be on the edge. I'll be doing something dope. The AI space moves very quickly. I've also, I want to address your question. So yeah, sponsorships right now are 98%. Will they be like that forever? No. Right now I'm kind of moving into, because I'm lucky enough to, and I consider myself lucky. There was a quote that has guided me through this so well. And it was actually a Jordan Peterson quote where he said, "You might be on top of the wave, but you are not the wave." And I throw that on my Instagram story a lot because I see a lot of creators who they're riding a wave and they think they're the wave. And I'm like, you're about to be really disappointed. And so I'm always understanding that I'm lucky. I'm on top of this wave. I'm going to ride it for as long as I can. I'm going to be me while I can. I'm going to turn it into whatever I can, but do not mistake yourself. Like, you aren't the wave. Like, you're riding it. And so like that has been a core message, because I do acknowledge the fact that I'm just like incredibly lucky. I was right place, right time when I learned about it. And then I'm trying to create, I just wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, it's like basically all sponsorships. And then right now I want to start getting into advising and investing in companies. And then I'm very interested. I saw you and Roberto were talking about about Hormozy and kind of that whole deal with school. And I feel like that's going to be the whole new thing, like invest, like the next wave is just creators investing in companies and then giving value through content. And so I'm very interested in that model. And I'm actually talking to a company right now around content creation, about AI making content creation easier for human style content, because I'm not very interested in the automated AI content. I'm interested in the AI around the learning and making it super easy and frictionless to post like content like that. And so I'm thinking about making some big moves there. That's kind of what I'm thinking about next.
There's so many like tributaries I want to jump off in this. So on the sponsorship side, does the framework work something like this, where you are researching, you're like, you're ingesting from all different places, you're in Discords, you're everywhere, you're like, you discover something that piques your interest, a tool or some company or a framework or whatever, you see it on Twitter, and before you even make content about that, you reach out to them and you're like, hey, this is interesting to me. We could do a sponsored video. Let's look at a sponsor, whatever. Meaning like you use your curiosity pipeline to seed ideas for partnerships, and you almost don't make a video unless you shake the tree to see if there's something there. Is that how you do it? Or it's much more inbound and like you just make whatever you want?
100% of the videos I've made, early on, there was a few when I wasn't I think it was like probably like a year ago now. There was actually a few that I reached out, like Photo AI was one that I reached out beforehand. And I was like, hey, like let's work out a percentage. But since then, 100% of them have been inbound. I'm lucky enough that like now that ever since I positioned myself as like the AI guy on TikTok and Instagram, it's just if you're a company that integrates AI, they're likely in my inbox.
They need you.
You've met my manager who just kind of handles the inbounds, and we just look at all of them. And I'm very aggressive with like, if you want me to talk about your post before we ever talk about that, I want to see the tool and use it. Usually I don't make a video about it because it sucks. I've turned down so many sponsors. Like for every sponsorship I've accepted, I've turned down 100. But like, they're just companies. Like the last one I did was I went to a Google conference and I use Google. I'm a huge Google product. Like I don't use Microsoft stuff. I use Google products. Like I use Docs, I use Calendar, I use all of it. And it was a Google workspace. Like I use that all the time. I'm interested in that. And so by going to that, I went to a conference where I got to learn about it and I got paid to do it and make a video and post stories. Like that's great. Like hell yeah.
That's the golden zone, I think. The golden zone is you get paid to make the stuff you already would have made for free. And it's like they're paying to grow your like trust with audience and size, right? Like that's the golden loop.
Yes. And we've talked about this at great lengths about ways that you can sort of cut out the communication every single time and kind of create that ongoing way to monetize the content with certain companies. But and there's a big alignment right now between me and the deal flow. Like there's consistent deal flow that I have deep alignment with. As soon as that shifts, as soon as that's no longer the case and I feel it like, okay, most of these deals are companies that I wouldn't normally talk about, that's when I'll be like, okay, we're pivoting into business mode. I need to create something. I need a partner. And one of the cool things about being in the position I'm in, like I can partner with some of the smartest AI creators in the world. Like I can reach out to people, be like, I like what you're building. You're suffering with marketing. Let's make a super interesting deal. Like I want to take a business route on, like I want to kind of help with your marketing deep down. Like are you willing to do an equity deal? Like those types of things. Yeah. And I think that's what I'm realizing. A lot of very talented builders are more open to that than you think.
So this is a really interesting, and I think like pretty forward looking thread, right? Which is like, what does the future model for creators look like? The existing model, which you've proven is like still super lucrative, is brand pays creator X, creator makes video or like goes to conference, whatever. That's like the base level. One level up is like technical builder partners with creator 50-50. The creator goes full time into the business as like the marketing engine, but kind of like it's a one bet where you're concentrated bet. One level up from there, which is what we're talking about. I've done one of these as a trial, and like I'm very interested in this model. Is the creator is like a mercenary gun for hire, both as from their own audience, like, hey, I can make content about this to my own audience, but eventually that'll get saturated. So even more so valuable from like, I know how content works. I know how marketing works, psychology works, audience works. I can either build the channels faceless for the brand. I can go get other creators to do it. I just like the skids are lubricated to be able to make the marketing work. But they're doing that for multiple companies at the same time and getting either equities, cash, or both as like, I don't even know how to say, like a fractional head of content or something like some model like that. To me, that's where it's going. And that's really interesting to me because taking a concentrated bet 50-50 only in one thing where it's exclusive is risky, especially if you're putting your audience up almost at risk. If you're going to like market specifically to your audience, you have to be like really sure that that's the idea that perfectly fits with your audience. So yeah, I'm curious how you think about that because I think for you, whenever you're the guy in a space, you're going to be set. It's going to be set for a long time, especially when the space is this long, just on the ad side. So like, let's assume like you're able to make $1 million a year from that for the next 5 to 10 years. Awesome. Like that should be pretty turnkey. And that'll go up as your audience goes up. But let's assume just like for hypothetical, that goes away. What is the most interesting product or like go-to-market service product that you would build or would be interesting to you right now to look at potentially building? Because that's where the mode I am right now. Like I'm not niche down. I probably should be. I don't have a manager bringing these deals in. So like I'm getting some of the ad stuff, but I'm really, really interested in the product side where I can own equity in like a cash flowing business. Talk to me about your thoughts there.
There's so many. Do you follow Greg Eisenberg?
Yeah.
Yeah. I really like his philosophy on
the ACP thing.
And like kind of creating a community, understanding deep down like what people want, kind of creating the distribution channel prior to creating a product. And then once you reach a point where you know enough builders in the space come in and be like, hey, I have these 500 users who want to try these things. And would you want to create a product around it? You asked me what my favorite, like what products I'd be interested in creating. There's so many of them. It's hard to even list. I've really like kind of Greg talks about the membership model where you get access to a community, you get access to maybe a suite of products. Maybe there's ways you can upgrade. I definitely see the internet shifting into kind of a more community dominated world where people are going to kind of leave these platforms and people like to connect with people. So I'm very interested in community paired with education. I just think it's a much taller task than I always think. I always underestimate how much work goes into a community, how much work goes into it. And so at some point before it ever reaches a saturation point, which I think that's incredibly optimistic to think you can make $1 million a year for 5 years. I mean, that would be cool. Like, don't get me wrong, but like, I just can't imagine it's going to, for whatever reason, like I feel like hype around the word AI might dry up or like, I'm in a plan for like maybe it will last another 6 months to a year. And maybe you can continue doing that and build a business on the side. And so the nice part about this amount of cash is I don't have to ever deal with any VCs and I can actually start my own company. And I feel like I'm reaching a point where I'm actually learning, talking to the right people that I might just build a team of operators, like 2 or 3. It's amazing what you can do with 2 or 3 operators that could help me with everything, especially ones that understand how to use AI. And we could eventually kind of build out a suite of products that could work for the community that I'm building. And so that's my next phase is going from this like, I always want to be exploring. I need a team of operators behind me that are like sick just to the, because my brain doesn't work like that. I'm an explorer. I think there's explorers and operators. and then everyone else. And the companies need both, right? And then very rarely you get like a Steve Jobs who's like both an explorer and an operator at just like an insane level. And I just wouldn't consider myself that. And I know my limitations. I know that I'm never going to be a creator operator, but I can surround myself with them. And if I surround myself with them, then I can do the exploration, they can do the operation, and then we create something beautiful. And so that is actually a big part. It's like I'm just kind of trying to meet as many people as possible, find synergy with the right people, and then eventually maybe start a company and build a team of operators. And then we can build hundreds of products. With AI, it's so easy to build products, and the products could kind of piggyback off of each other. And so I like that community product model a lot. So I think that would be the most interesting to me right now, for sure.
That was, so like to give a tactical example, that was the route that I was thinking about going down, which is, because the whole thing is like, people build the wrong stuff. And the reason they build the wrong stuff is because they're not asking the buyer what they actually need or want. And so my thinking was, okay, I have the content figured out. And by figured out, I mean, it could always be better and bigger, but like, I kind of know what to do. So do you. The next step is like, can you build a community, not so that you can harvest money from the community, but so you can harvest the pain points so that you know what's actually built. So like if you had a community, I mean, you do have a community of like 2,000 people who care about AI. If you were asking the right questions, and you probably already are, to those people about daily workflows and like things that they need help with, you could mine that for the top 10 pain points and then know what the roadmap should be with those operators to go build. So it's kind of like this use content to get top of funnel, drip some of that top of funnel into a community, which are like the diehards around whatever topic it is. Use the pain points of the diehards to know what to build, sell the thing you built back to the diehards, and then use content to market that back to the masses. It's like this V kind of drip funnel thing, which I never thought of until I just talked about it, or like I never thought of that framework until I just talked about it now, but it makes a lot of sense. And the thing though, I haven't launched the community yet because it's a shit ton of work, which is exactly what you said, which is like, as I sit here, I'm much more like you, where I want to be in the wormholes. I don't want to be managing a community. Like I enjoy talking to people, and it would be cool if I just pressed go, showed up for an hour, just, pontificated about the most interesting stuff I saw and like demoed it or whatever. But I don't want to be in the message boards. I don't want to have to make everyone feel like it's active. And because right now I'm like literally a solo, I have no team, I have no manager, I'm solo. I don't want that to be the case, but that is what it is. I just think it's it would be extremely destructive to the content creation flow if I had to then manage a community from scratch on my own. So while I'd say that V is like incredible value and probably the best way to build as a creator product-wise, I haven't found a good way to launch a community in a way that wouldn't be destructive to my current workflow. So I'm curious, go ahead.
My biggest regret in starting a community was not just using like Telegram or WhatsApp. I'm realizing now that some of the people I'm talking to, it's like so frictionless, and it's a good way to start. And if the conversation dies, it's like, who cares? It doesn't matter. And when you can post Zoom links and you can pin things. So like you can start a WhatsApp community, which I never even knew. Like I thought it was just like a group chat, like a giant group chat, but like you can create a community where there's channels within it. And then it's just it's like a bunch of group chats. Whereas the creator, you can pin certain things. And so then you can just pin one link at the top that kind of takes you to like a central dashboard of like all of the things going on, major conversations. You could hire a virtual assistant to handle a lot of that work relatively easily. So it's super hands off. And then one of the reasons why I'm super bullish on school is less because of Alex Hormozy and more because of Sam Ovens. I talked to you about this in YouTube comments. I binged all of his content. I love the way he thinks. He's so calm, and so like the way he talks about community is just so refreshing. And I would recommend anyone who's thinking about community to just kind of binge his content from like 2 years ago to now. He doesn't post very much anymore. He's not attention driven like Alex is. That's why they brought him in. He is the operator. Even though Alex is an amazing operator, like amazing, he's more so top of funnel, where Sam Ovens, I feel like, is this master operator who's like very detail oriented and make sure that nothing's out of place. And just watching that made me realize that like I really want to find someone as close to the level of detail that he is. It's very impressive in my opinion.
Yeah. And your community's on Circle, right?
Yeah, I like Circle. I don't like Discord. And that's just a preference thing. Like Discord, I think Discord's useful to like go into and like hop from community to community and be a part of like 50 communities, and you can set up automations, and it's just like fast paced. And I didn't want that. Should I have done on Circle? I'm not sure yet.
Here's my take on this, which, I haven't built a community, so being in the trenches, I could be wrong, but I try to think a lot about like the user experience from the highest level. Like that my brain just I have like a product brain. My brain just goes straight to, does this make sense for the user? And another thing that keeps holding me back from launching a community on School, Circle, any of these platforms where people aren't already, I think most average people have too many input channels that's overwhelming them already. And so to create another one that is not native to their daily workflow or like daily consumption flow, it's a recipe for it to eventually just arb to zero. So like most people, the average person, they go on TikTok, they go on Instagram, maybe they go on Twitter, maybe they check Snapchat, they've got text messaging, maybe they use WhatsApp, they use WhatsApp if they're international, but like, and they use Slack for work. So if you add another one to the stack, I've always thought as a user personally, like I don't want another one. Like I want whatever I do to be embedded in the ones I'm already going to, because you can only have it's like the Dunbar's number, but for like social channels, there's only so many things you can remember to check or want to check on a daily basis. So that's another thing that's holding me back. Like I went in school, I constructed the whole community, I scripted the video for the intro, like I built the whole thing. And then I just like sat back and I was like, if I was an average person, even if I was diehard about what I'm trying to talk about, would I get excited about opening another portal in addition to all the shit I have to do? I didn't even mention email, like all the shit I have to do on a daily basis. I don't know. So that's why when you talk about WhatsApp, like it's much closer to what I think people are already using. And so it's not as big of a lift. I'm curious what you think about this.
I agree. Now, in hindsight, I agree. I was very excited. There's something rewarding about like talking to the people who like really vibe with your content. And at the beginning, my community was like popping, and it's dying down a little bit right now. I feel like it can be reinvigorated by events. And so the way that I think about it is like, how do I take some of the value that's from sponsorships and push it to a community? Right, where instead of like doing a sponsorship deal or instead of doing a private meeting, why don't I just do a live stream with them in the community? What if right now, when we're talking right now, like after a while, once you've built a foundation for your like a community, why not just have these conversations live and people can comment on the side? People love that stuff. And so there's a flywheel, in my opinion, where like, because of your content, X amount of things happen, whether that's money can come in through sponsorships or you get certain attention, you get reached out to certain people. It's like, what percentage of those things that are coming in can you push to provide value for both you and a community of people? And then like, how do you get those systems in place for every time someone comes in to talk about AI music, that gets clipped up and turned into little modules for a course that you could do. So like you could set up a back end. So like there's value. And so like the community could also be looked at as a website too. And so like if you've cultivated a very solid website, like you just collect their email, because on Circle you collect their email every time they're joined, where Discord that's not true.
Yeah, that's key.
On Circle you also get their email, and then so it can also be treated like, okay, yeah, you have to sign in to this thing, and then you get access to content that I can't find anywhere else. Or maybe it's organized a little bit better. And so if you nail that and just think about it like a website, and then you add in the layer of community on top of it, it might make sense. It's hard. It's very hard to run a community. So I have a lot of thinking that I need to do around it for sure.
I think there's a really good insight in there, which is most like internet entrepreneur people approach community building as like, how can I build a private island that I can charge access to and create my own little world. But I think that's thinking very much, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but like this is how I was thinking initially, and I think a lot of people that I consume think this way. That's very much a like, how can a community benefit me approach, like me, creator first benefit approach. But if you invert it and you're like, okay, what would the user actually, like how can we benefit the user most? It's possible that like a gated private island isn't the right form factor. And like the most cult communities don't even have a message board or like a repository of private content. You know, like when you think cult community is like Nike has like a pretty global cult community, or like Represent George Heaton. They don't have a private portal that you can sign into. Like community, it's almost like community is almost like brand in a way, right? It's like, it is like in the blood. It's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be a destination to go to that's separate from everything else.
How are we defining community? I don't think that I would argue that there's not a Nike community. I feel like there's people who wear Nike, and like when I wear Nike, I'm not walking around. And if I see someone else in Nike, I'm like, like.
So when I think community, so I guess there's two different definitions. When I think what I want to build a community, I think cult. I want to build like a cult mindset. Community, I guess, could be more of a place. Like the word community could be a destination. But for me, the more powerful thing isn't, it could be either way. The more powerful thing to me is not the place to go where you get private information. It's the identity attachment to the ideals of whatever that is. And maybe you could say that's brand, you know? So like I guess it's splitting hairs with the framing.
But it's a thin line between the two. I get what you're saying with it. It's just, for me, I don't know, maybe I've never thought about this. Like, how do you build, maybe the best way to do it would be to literally start a brand and like, anyways, keep going. Sorry. This is a very interesting thread.
This is why I like pushing the framework, because let's just say the objective is you want people to buy stuff. Let's just say that's to simplify it. You want someone to buy something you're selling. And like the common conventional internet entrepreneur framework is, if I want someone to buy something, I'm going to set up a community for them, which is a private island for them to go. Maybe it's free, maybe it's paid. I'm going to give them a bunch of extra knowledge and content. And they're going to like me more because they're in this exclusive group, and therefore buy something when I sell it. That's like one approach. Another approach could just be like, you don't even do all that. You circumvent the private island and the knowledge, and you're just like so good with the content top of funnel that's free that people feel a cult fandom for you that they'll buy your shit anyway. So it's like the whole like, no, I believe that community is going to be the most powerful layer, but I'm questioning if like, what people actually want is these gated private islands that are mostly knowledge, like extra knowledge first, or at least that's the way I was thinking about it, you know, like setting up the school. It's mostly just extra information. Do people even want extra information? Maybe like building that cult tie is there's some other way to do it.
This is interesting. I actually really appreciate this perspective, because like if everyone's trying to start communities and the cost of creating a free community or a paid community goes down, more and more people are going to do it. It's like, do you want to be a part of 10 communities? Like, are you going to be part of 100 communities? Like,
exactly. There's a Dunbar's number for that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree with that. And so the question is, to create something, you know, that guy on TikTok who like runs around, has like the fake butt and he like does all that crazy. Like, you ever see that guy? Yeah.
He runs in slow motion.
Like, I feel like he's actually done the best version of that, because like they just released a board game, and there's like a board game and it's called like Slap That. It's a complete like gag gift, but I bet you they're going to sell millions of dollars worth of it, like across all of his platforms, because he's created such a cult like. It's such, and he
like probably doesn't have a private Slack, right? He doesn't have a private Slack or like a school or anything. He's like it's almost like the community. And I'm saying it's not the community's extra step. I think people want to be a part of something that will never go away. So like that piece of it is important, but like building the private island knowledge base, it's almost as if it is a way, but a slower way to build that cult. Like every clothing brand has a cult following, where people buy, every big one, where people buy their drops all the time. They have an email list, but they don't have like a place that you go to like talk to the founder. Now, if they did, would they sell more? Maybe. Would those cult relationships be deeper? Maybe. I'm not sure, but I do think it's worth questioning. And the reason it's worth questioning is just because it's a shit ton of work to build that private island with all the knowledge and continue to pump out content for that and top of funnel and manage like all the network. Like there's only so many things you can do well in a day, I think, unless you have an amazing team that's like scaling everything you do. For example, does Gary Vee have a private community? And I'm not saying Gary Vee is the pinnacle of everything, but like, does Gary Vee have a private community where you pay to join? I don't know. Like he has a public Discord.
Well, VFriends is that version. Like you have to buy his NFT, and most people who've bought that have lost significant amount of money. Like obviously the early people who bought and sold, they're doing great. But
before that, did he? Before that, did he have a community? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I definitely, because Gary understands and embraces he even says it, like the day trading of creating content. He's platform agnostic. He has no ego. As soon as something new pops on the scene, he'll be there. And his cult following, I think, got cut into like 10% because of the whole NFT thing. I think that any person that dove deep into NFTs got destroyed. I feel like even someone like Kevin Rose got really, really badly hit by that. Yeah. Because it turned out to be such a bubble. But
it's interesting to think about, right? Because you could say Gary had a really cult following, and I'm pretty sure he didn't have before NFTs and Discord, he did not have like a community destination to go to, but yet he had a very cult following. People bought his books, people bought his products. Marketers were like obsessed with his conferences before. And so that begs the question, like, okay, is he a community builder? I don't know, like whatever that term means, but he had cult fandom and people were buying his stuff. So like if that was the end goal, it is interesting that he didn't. You would think he's like kind of forward thinking around all this internet stuff, and even he didn't build like a private membership more or less. So yeah, it's just interesting. I love kicking the tires.
Or at least it was something he didn't promote all the time. And I feel like there's something about someone who promotes a community all the time that's a huge turnoff to and a lot of community is driven by. This is making me want to like not do a community. Not gonna lie.
No, I don't mean to say this.
No. Actually, though, this is a very useful process. It's like in order to start a community, do you need to create this like siloed experience? Because now that I'm thinking about it, like that new guy on Instagram. The guy that has blown up on Instagram faster than anyone I've ever seen, that Davis guy who's like in Boston. Who's like locked in or whatever. And like, he's like created these memes. I call it like locked in. We're locked in. And his energy and everything about him, like his community's in his comment section. Like you look at no one comments on videos more. And so he's skipped out on the process. Whereas if you have this private community, people would probably post after they see his video, probably post in the community. So now he doesn't have that public display of community.
Exactly.
And now it's like siloed off to the side. And so now it honestly might be like a dilution where you have it split. You have the people who comment on your stuff, and then you have the people who comment in the side thing.
Lose compounding. You lose compounding. But this is what I mean by like, if Davis had a circle or a school or a Discord, could he get 5,000 people to sign up? Yeah, he could. But like, would he get 100,000? No, because those other 95 already have too many pipes that they're checking every day, and they want to be like in the comments of the thing they're already in, which is Instagram. So it's much more like native to their experience.
So they're like more likely to buy a locked in sweatshirt than they are to join a free community. You know,
exactly. It's so inefficient of his effort to have to go to a Discord to like post extra vlogs that he's not posting elsewhere to then try to sell the sweatshirt to only 5,000 people versus just post the link in a story to 100,000 he already has because he's using the native tailwinds of the platforms. So for me, it's like, I'm not saying communities can't win. I think a lot of people are going to build these little islands and they're going to make like a couple $100,000 a year from them. But is it worth the effort when you could just compound that elsewhere? I've always thought like, if I'm putting my effort into a piece of content, I want that content to be seen by as many people as possible. As soon as you have a paid, and yours is free, so you can repost it easily. But as soon as you have a paid community that's knowledge, the knowledge is one of the gates, you then have to create stuff put effort into creating stuff that isn't seen by 95% of people, which inherently like cuts the value of it significantly, or not the value, but it cuts the viral factor of it. Like that effort is now not super efficient that you used to make it. So, and again, I'm not anti-community. I just want to figure out what makes sense to me. I think the thing that I don't like about communities, the thing I hate most, I guess, is freedom is when you have no obligation to do anything. And communities to me feel obligatory, especially once you take money, because as soon as it's $20 a month, I feel now obligated to create for it a certain amount of times, even if I don't want to, or like to go in there and message people. Now I want to like the people in there and I want to help as many people as possible, but like, I don't want to feel obligation. And so, yeah, this is the constant battle in my head of like, at some point, I describe this a lot, my workflow, and I'm curious to get your take on this. I can see your mind is running. You're like, shit, should I shut down the community? I definitely didn't mean for this to turn into that.
I mean, this is all like incredibly useful in a perspective that I haven't considered in a while. This is good. This is really good. Nice. And like people it's a free community. People would understand, but also they might have insights as well. Like I'm going to go and post, like I'll probably post a link to this and be like, hey, like I'm constantly out of time. I've been to New York, LA, Vegas, and San Francisco, all within the last, like, I don't even remember. I don't even know. Like it's insane the last few weeks. And so like, I'm looking for a way to create a community. But one thing that I did learn from Sam Ovens is that like, it can be hands off. There are people making so much money doing coffee hour, where all they do, their whole community is just 1 hour a day. They log on and do coffee hour. They talk, they drink coffee and talk to people and just like hang out like a live stream and let people come up and like on their phone and they talk. And it's like this like kind of fun experience. And you only get access if you pay X amount of money. Do I want to do that? I don't know yet. And maybe I did have
That's more interesting to me. That's more interesting to me than having to make content that you put in it that isn't alive, you know?
Yeah. And so it's like, that's it. If that's all you're doing, you just have to make sure that like, and you could, that sounds fun. Like that could be like a fun thing. And especially if you're making great money and you can have someone like, that's the thing though. It's like, it's getting started, because if you were to create a community with $20 per month, yeah, if you have 100 people signed up for that, you're going to have a bad time. But if you have 1,000 people signed up for that, you're gonna, you might actually, you can hire someone. Like you can hire someone. Like there's so many people looking for jobs right now that like $6,000 a month, if you paid someone like the right person, like I'm convinced you can get so much output from that amount of money. And then that they might be able to triple the amount of users coming in. They might be able to take your content, turn it into a newsletter, or turn it into a channel, or convince more people, more of your followers to sign up. Maybe you pay them to just respond to all your comments, something like that. And like once you reach that flywheel and then you stay lean, so you have X amount of profit, like that's when you can start thinking about it like, okay, I just set up this engine. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Now it's like, how do we fuel it without taking away from my time? And so I'm not at that point with a community yet. I do everything exploratory. Like I probably do things on a whim way too often because I'm an explorer and I started a community. I'm like, you know what? This sounds fun. I'm going to do it and see what happens. And probably shouldn't do that as much, but
most of these roads lead to the operator, right? It's like, that's what you've realized and I'm realizing is, okay, community, not necessarily a bad idea. Community that I run myself, bad idea. So it's like, in order to make it work for me and for the value for the users, it needs to be operated by a community manager. The question that I've always run up against is like, if I build a community and then remove myself from the majority of the lift, is it removing some of the value that people signed up for? Because they're not getting me 24/7, they're getting, a community manager and I'm coming in 1 hour a day. If they don't think of it that way and they're happy to do it, then it's very sustainable. And like you said, you're building an engine. It's like you build all these cars, you can only drive one at a time. You can't drive all 6 cars. So you need drivers in each of them, but you have to pay for drivers.
So, okay, let's think about this for a second, because this is interesting to me. What if, for example, let's use us as an example right here. Why aren't more people talking about communities that are like multi-creator, like 4 or 5 different creators come together, you create a community, And then you schedule like 3 lives per week or something, maybe between different creators, and maybe you get the whole group together. And like you come to these meetings with like certain perspectives and like certain things you're going to talk about. And then you pitch in for someone to take all that information and make it organized into a community. So it's like super hands off. And then you could actually create incentives. So like you could create like every new user that comes in, if you do a paid community, every new user comes in, that like half of the cost will like you put some percentage. Like, so if they use each creator has their own link. So like you get like, there's an affiliate portion and then like a decided percentage portion that goes back to like whatever entity you want to create. I feel like that could be an interesting model. Like
that is an interesting model. I think the reason more people don't do it is just because the numbers aren't that compelling, like unless you get to a huge scale. So like, for example, and this is the math I started running, and I think people listening to this, we're an hour 10 in. If you're listening to this, you're a creator, and this is like super helpful for you to like hear the transparent back and forth. Like, run the numbers. So like $20 a month. If you had 1,000 people in the community, which I think is a lot to get to pay $20 a month, that's $20,000 a month. Okay, if you had 4 creators in there, that's $5,000 a month for each of them, which isn't nothing, but like after you pay the operator, each creator is walking away with like a couple grand a month. Now, if the obligation is 5 to 10 hours a week and that's it, or 5 hours a week, would you be willing to spend 5 hours a week for $2,000 a month? So that's $400 an hour. Probably, but it's getting close to the line of like, my time could probably make more money elsewhere. So I think the issue is if you're going to do that with like 3 or 4 creators, you would need 10,000 subscribers at $20 a month, which can happen, but you would need to pick the right vertical and like set it up the right way. So I think the issue is with communities, unless you have a community manager, they take a ton of time and you're usually not getting the commensurate reward for that time unless you have a ton of paying subscribers or it's really expensive. Now, as you were saying that, and like just before, I thought of this is a kind of a sick idea, a little bit different model, or I guess a similar model. What if like, you know how like old TV, you'd have a channel, throughout the day you have 30-minute slots. Then we went to streaming. Wouldn't it be sick if there was a paid community where, I guess this is like a flavor of what you just said, but a paid community where you had like 8 creators, each one had a live stream slot throughout the day, and you basically paid like $10 a month to get access to the TV channel, and the TV channel was like a live stream from each of the, like you had slots, right? So like maybe I do the 12 to 1 slot, and then the whole group does the 8 to 9, like the party hour or whatever, and like you do the 9 to 10 slot, whatever. And really it's like, it's more like a drop-in for the user to be like, okay, maybe $20 a month is not worth it to just get this one person's attention for 1 hour a week, but now I'm getting like all this private live stream channel and like the programming is organized. So like, I don't know. There's something interesting there though. What's the difference between that and Twitch, right? Because you can just jump around. Twitch is more like you have a full TV guide.
My initial thought is like, why don't we just go after someone has like a failing content or a failing competitor to something like Circle and just like buy the platform. And then like, to me, that seems like that's very aspirational. Like the operations might be more expensive than the creators for that. Like there's a lot of just like scheduling, and like creators aren't super reliable all the time. As you could tell, like this is the 3rd time we've scheduled this podcast. So yeah, I feel like there would be a lot of challenges there. And yeah, I agree. I agree to what you said at the beginning of what you were just about the like, it's not necessarily worth it if you have 1,000 users. And that's why you need to have conviction over kind of what you're talking about. And because like, could you get 100,000 users in there? Like that's when it gets really interesting. But like, there's something about the movement. Like you'd probably have to create some sort of meme, like in like if in this hypothetical world, if you and I, and then 2 other creators, were to like start this, like we would probably create some vernacular that we would all say, or try to build that cult on top and then drive people in. You would just have to reach that critical mass, in my opinion. And then I think you could actually really grow it, but it would take, which is the hard part, a lot of conviction from all 4 parties and a lot of work. Yeah.
I think that in my mind, the most valuable time spent for people like us is mining on the edges for the unique and original. And then it's up to us / whoever the operator is to figure out how to most effectively package that to extract the most value, or not extract is a negative word, but like to capture the most value, right? So like, for example, there's only so many archaeologists. So like you're a really good archaeologist for AI, right? You go into the dirt and find the original shit and you bubble it up. And what your special skill is and mine is that you can take a complex idea and simplify it down. Now, if you make a short form video, that's one packaging. If you do a live stream where you're like talking about it more long form, that's another. If you go into a private community that's gated and talk about it via Zoom, that's another. If you tweet about it, that's another. There's like all these different packages. What I think I need to get better at, and what the best creators are best at, is they know what the right packaging is to get the most value back out for them, but still give the highest value to the consumer of it. Short form right now is like the best way to get views, but dollars, maybe not. I mean, I would say what you're doing with the sponsorships is like the most lucrative that I've seen at someone our size at extracting value out through that packaging. But the question is, are there other packages where you could make even, capturing, but capturing the value. I mean, but you're not taking it from the user. That's why I like that, is like the business is happy to pay, the user pays nothing and everyone's happy, versus like a paid community, you're kind of taking money from the user, giving it back to the user. Maybe they're happy, maybe they're not.
My perspective on that, I used to have that perspective, what you just said about, you're like, oh, but you're not taking it from the user. I used to think of making money directly from the user as kind of this negative process. I'm not sure I feel the same way anymore. I've like really tried to like lean in. Like people want to pay money to the things that they like. And it's actually like you should capture value, because ultimately if someone's buying a course from you, or willing to buy a course from you and pay you money, like they're probably going to spend it on another creator. And if you're a good creator, capturing value is actually like you should capture as much value as you can. Peter Thiel in 0 to 1 talks about how like all businesses create X amount of value and capture Y% of that X, right? Where airlines create a ton of value, but they capture none of it because the margins are so low, right? And so like my whole thinking is like, I do want to capture more value, because if I can capture more value and I think that I could create a better community / course than someone else, the more value I capture will allow me to fuel that money to create more value, and people are voting with their money. And so I think like people are actually like excited to pay money. It's just like, can you package it in a way that allows you to like capture the momentum of what you're doing? Which is very hard, because as soon as you over monetize and try and capture too quickly, right, then it might completely turn off your whatever message you're trying to put out there in the content space. So it's hard to balance.
That's a very healthy. I think it's a very healthy way to look at it, and I completely agree. That was very well said. I'm curious. We'll ask a few more questions and we'll get you out of here. Of the other so right now you said 98% subscription, or not 90% sponsorships through like either appearances plus like sponsored videos, we'll say. Of the other routes that you've kicked the tires on but didn't do or haven't done yet, what's your thinking around those? So you talked about like building your own product, which you probably want to do in the future, but not right now. You don't even need to do now. You talked about we talked about the community side. You went to go free. Were you going to go paid with the community and then decide to go free because the sponsorship money was working? Or like, what was your thinking on that?
No, I just wanted to test it. And I agree with your take that as soon as you go paid, you have this sort of obligation. Worst case scenario, I charge for it, it doesn't work. And then now I'm stuck with like a small community that I'm like tied to because of like that. This was more of like an exploration. There's weeks where it's like super fun. We do contests in there for like creating stuff with AI. And stuff that I think would actually really turn into a fun community that would build because you have to remember that if you create a really good community, there's actually like natural word of mouth that'll happen. It's not just you converting. If you actually create a really good product, it'll actually there's some people out there with really good communities with no top of funnel. They paid for all the people to get in originally, and then all their advertising is straight up affiliates or that type of growth, which honestly, like if you can get the top of funnel plus that aspect where like then you can turn it into something big. I just thought like, okay, like I want to experiment with the idea of building enterprise value, like having a certain community has value, right? If you have X amount of people checking a platform, doing these things, if you can actually alter their behavior and create something that is so good, that like people are really into it and they want to participate, like that's worth a lot of money in the long run. But I don't think you can build an intuition on how to do that before you've just kind of dipped your toes in, you know, and that's kind of what I'm doing, right? I don't think you can conceptualize community. I don't think you could learn it in a textbook. I don't think you could learn it by hiring I feel like you have to have this kind of like, okay, what are the main pain points? I understand that like it's the ebb and flows. You need to have events. Events are key for communities. Events are the lifeblood of communities. I didn't know that. I thought it would be the courses and stuff. It's less so the courses and more so the events that create conversation. If you can create enough events and enough conversation and the habits for people to like participate, eventually it'll run itself sort of. Like people will come in and just talk and then you can just act like a community member. It's your community, but you're just a member hanging out. And then one thing that I was thinking about with communities, like they can end up pushing the edge for me, right? If you create a community of people who want to push the edge and they're now pushing the edge, in my community, people post links all the time. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I'm going to make content on that. And so if you can create that, right? Like, and there's so many people who want to help you make content. I was actually thinking about an idea. Sorry if this is like way off with your question.
No, let it fly.
But this is something I've been thinking about as well, is like, what about open sourcing my entire content creation process and entire note-taking thing? Like that's what my community is. So like, I will pay a virtual assistant to kind of like transfer everything over, all my notes and ideas that I take in my mind, that aren't like personal notes, just like put them in the community. Be like, these are Riley's thoughts and ideas from the day. And like, that's just like a channel, like you can comment on them. And then the next phase would be like gamification on that for like people to contribute their ideas. But like, I was thinking about that. And then like all my scripts, I might just like write down an idea, because in Circle you can do it, and like I could have people comment, be like, I don't think you should say this, you should say this. Then eventually you get kind of like crowdsourcing your content creation process, which I think could be fun. So based on what I've said so far in this podcast before that has been kind of negative on community. I actually like my community. It's the time part is the thing I need to solve for.
I like what you said there around, it's almost like async live stream, but not via video, via like text, right? So you're like, live stream is not the right word, but you're like live sharing your text related things like the My Mind or your scripts or whatever. You're like live sharing it. It's more interactive. That's kind of interesting. I've never seen anyone do it.
Are you on Air Chat yet?
No.
Okay. There's something there. And one of the cool things about being in a position like I am, just like from a creator perspective, is like, I'm like, this is interesting to me. I'm going to spend 6 hours on this and just not just messing around using this new social media platform.
Do you have a link invite code?
I think they stopped that. If not, if I do, I'll send it to you right after this.
All right, cool.
My phone,
I think I saw AirChat. Was this V2? I think I saw it before, and it was like nothing.
It was bad.
Initially.
They completely revamped their thing. It looks kind of like Threads, but it is all audio. You cannot type on this app, and their transcription. And it's created by Naval Ravikant. And so like that is super bullish in my opinion, long term, because he's not like, he even said like, he's like, obviously influencers are welcome here. You're probably not going to like it. He's like, this is a very peer-to-peer thing, but you can create channels and communities within it. You actually can't do it yet. They have like 20 that you can join, because there's only like 10 to 20,000 people on this platform, because they capped it because they're scaling it. It's brand new. At least the newest version is brand new. And every time someone posts, you hear their voice, and it's a completely different way to to
experience information,
experience cool. Community and co-presence. And it's so good at what's it called? It's so good at transcribing things that I really I think that there's actually something to that, like an asynchronous group podcast that people can participate in. And then you can link to photos, you can link to videos, and like photos will show up as a small thing. So it's not like Twitter. Twitter's turned into just a very visually dominant platform, which is not the point of original Twitter. I think images should show up as tiny little attachments, and text is that main thing, you know? I think the vision, and so like I'm very bullish on this platform. And I think that there's something there, because I think that there's something about text communities that makes it not feel like a community. But there's something about this audio thing. I'm like, oh, okay, this is actually starting to feel more like a community. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there.
If you have a link, send it over. I definitely, or maybe if I was on it before, do you have to re-sign up potentially?
Yeah. They should have texted you, actually. I think you should have gotten a text from AirChat directly to like re-sign up. They like revamped it. This is their third revamp. And the last one was more, it wasn't as good. Now it looks like Threads, but only audio messages. But there's like little subtleties where they just nailed the user interface, in my opinion. Like it's awesome.
That's dope. I gotta check it out. The other question I had was, were there any other channels, like monetization channels or streams, that you guys kicked the tires on, either even if just a conversation and then you ruled it out, other than sponsorships, paid ads, community, that you were considering doing but didn't do? I would love to hear like the breakdown on that. So like courses could be one, paid newsletter, things like that. Yeah,
newsletter was a big one that I missed. I just like completely failed on, just because I hate email with a burning passion. Like I use Superhuman for email. So now it's like a little bit better. It's all hotkeys. I don't want anything in there. Like I do not enjoy the process. I respond to things in a tactical manner, and it's like straight to the point. I'm out. I want to be out of email as soon as I possibly can. So I've never consumed a newsletter. I've never seen like, hey, sign up for my newsletter, and I sign up. Never. I would never do that in my life. And so I missed that opportunity. I think I could have made a lot of money if I just kind of turned my notes into a newsletter. I tried it for a little bit. It was super unorganized because people were like, dude, you got to create a newsletter. I'm sure I could have made good money, whatever. That time has passed. I've learned a lot about newsletters. If I were to start one now, I feel like I could hire the right people to actually like make it good. So I understand the opportunity in newsletters. I understand that channel that people check email. Apparently, I've never been one to like do that. So that's one I probably fumbled the bag on for sure.
What about a course? Do you think about course or no?
I do think about courses, and I have a meeting with someone tomorrow talking about it. I can't release a course unless I think it's like really good and useful. And so if I do create a course, it's going to be sick. It's going to be epic. And I think I know for a fact that with the skill sets that I have could be very valuable for a lot of people. But it's going to come down to like organizing that information, recording myself. And then once the course is done, that's like less than half the work. Then it's like promotion of the course over and over and over and over again. And then deciding what content that you could make that could actually be evergreen. That's not going to be obsolete in 3 months, because that's the problem about pushing the edge. Which is why I think kind of the live community model is better, because it's just like an ongoing thing. It's just like, you want the latest in AI, go to this place. It's like that. There will be videos there. It's not this structured course that you put a ton of production value in. Oh shit, Midjourney version 7 is completely different than version 6. You're screwed. You got to re-record that. So it's like, how do I blend?
That's a drawback of the course.
Yeah. But one thing that's destroying my mental health is not working with people in person. I hate Zoom. I hate video stuff. I vibe with people at such a deeper level when I'm around them. I love being around people. I love working with people. My dream is to like turn this into something where we find a dope place to live, get an office building. I don't care if it's small, but like vibe out with people and just kind of like for 8 hours a day, you're in there, you're working with people in person. I think once I reach that level, which I want to do by probably a year from now, I would love to have an in-person office where at least like the core operators are in one central location. Find someone who wants to grind, hustle, good energy, and keep me on top of all the operational things. I think that's when I can start to scale and really pushed the limits. Because right now I'm still in the exploration phase. I'm still learning a lot of like, like there's a lot of accounting things that I'm still learning for. Like, what are the rules? Like, how much of an office could I write off? Like there's so many things that I'm learning, but like once I can operationalize that and get at least one or two people in person, I feel like that is ultimately what I want to do. And I feel like once I reach that level, I think creating courses would be a lot easier. It's like, okay, we're filming at this time. As soon as we're done filming, I'll take that footage and like I'll set up the camera equipment. There's so much switching cost when you work alone where like, okay, I got to set this up. I got to set the lighting right. It's like, oh, how do I do the lighting? I'm going to call my friend who knows about lighting on Zoom, be like, okay, yeah, move it a little bit to the left. And then after you're done filming, you got to upload it to the drive. And then the drive goes to the editor. And then you have to communicate with the editor, like how to edit this part. Be like, oh no, you should use B-roll. Where like, if you're in person, there's part of it where like they're working on their thing, I'm working on my thing. They can ask me a quick question. I'm right here. I'll be like, yeah, oh yeah, do that. But I just think there's something beautiful about—
the iteration cycles are so much tighter when you're in person.
Yes. Yeah. I think there's something beautiful about working with people in person. It's more fun, which is why you were saying at the beginning with the podcast, like there's a deeper level of connection if we were having this conversation face to face. Even though this conversation is fun, it's just not fully what it could be. Yeah.
Yeah. That's my dream has always been find a way to have like an office with just so my goal was always like I want to build a SWAT team of like the best savage in every discipline. So like an industrial engineer, a coder, a designer, like down the list, maybe like 6 to 10 people, and then have a physical place where we all go and just build dope shit forever. Like that, that was always my dream.
I use the terminology you used on Twitter for this, the internet pirates. You said that. I love that terminology because it's, I felt there was like this I agreed with that take on it. It's because it's true. The internet pirates, it's the mentality you develop after realizing what people are capable of on the internet. And then you're just like, let's go get after it. To me, it sounds way more fun to be internet pirates in person, right? You go use the internet, but like build the community. And then that's another thing with community. It's like live events. Like once you reach a certain level like that, I feel like every person I've talked to about online communities says, and this is something Sam Evans talks about, the lifeblood of online communities is in-person events. As soon as you have like 2 or 3 of them and people have like repeatedly met each other in real life, that's why they're going. People want real life connection. So if I could ever pivot, or not pivot, but like position myself to increase the amount of like FaceTime, like community in the real world, I think that is going to be an exponentially growing business. Like I feel like we are shoving ourselves down these like Wall-E end scene algorithms, and the massive industry is going to be pulling out of that. It's like mindfulness and connection with people in real life. And even if you're starting an online community, it might just be like an extension of those live events.
I totally agree. I totally agree with that. That's an amazing take. All right. The last thing I wanted to ask you is, and this is, I guess this is like selfish for me, but so as a consumer of my content, I'm in this like weird gray zone right now where I started out making content, knew nothing, rapidly increased the skill set. So the production quality was up and like my coherence was up and like understood content. But my whole approach was like, I don't know what I want to do or what I want to build. So let's just pick anything I find interesting. And that ranged from Taylor Swift NFL all the way to AI tools and in between. And I tried to like ride the sensing from what was resonating and like make more of that. So I had a period where the AI shit was working. So I was making more AI stuff or tech stuff. I had a period where the culture stuff was working. So whatever, so ebbs and flows. Now I'm in this period in the last 2 to 3 months where I tried to be like, let's reverse engineer what I could build, who I could build for. And I picked content creators because that's what I am. So I was like, or that's what I'm being right now. So I was like, oh, let me make more content around like content for content, how to be a content creator, right? So I niched down, lost all the magic. I think I went away from what makes me one of one. I commoditized myself slightly and didn't feel right. So I'm in this weird place where I'm like, what approach should I take? Like I say this a lot, I feel like a bazooka that's loaded but aimed the wrong direction. And if I could just aim myself correctly, I could build something sick. And I'm curious from your outside perspective on my stuff and like consuming it and like reading my voice in Blueprint and stuff. Do you have any thoughts around where you think there's a gap that you would like to see me plug into, or, anything in that realm would be just super helpful to your insight.
So I have a rule that I'm like trying to adhere to more, because I have thoughts. Like I have thoughts every time I watch your content. And I pay attention to your content. Like, you're a friend, and I really enjoy kind of what you're doing. And so I do have a lot of thoughts, but I refrain from giving any advice unless I'm explicitly asked. But here we are. So my first initial thought is, you have a certain style that has worked in the past. And the style, it's hard for me to put into words, but it's just however you package your videos. I feel it's very wavy content where you like kind of go in and out of weight layer. It's like you like this, I can't even describe it in words, but it's like it's a cadence thing, and it's visually packaged well. And I definitely don't think you should abandon it, because I think it's worked in the past. If you follow someone like Chris Claflin, do you follow him on TikTok? Yeah. Chris Claflin has this style. Fun fact, we found out like 3 months ago, we have the same video editor. Neither of us knew about it. But he does significantly more work for Chris. Like, I think like way more work for Chris. He actually made a long video about his video editor. His name's Luker. But he has one style of video where he got massive amounts, where it's like, he has like this like a lot of rising animations that are like cutouts with a lot of like highlighting, music. It's highly edited. But one thing Chris does is he doesn't just because that works, he doesn't only do that. He also helps other people make content like that. Like, he's an agent, he has like an agency, or I don't know. He helps other people for money, but like, he also will just completely change it up. And I used to go on lives with him like once a month, and it was so fun because he is it's so interesting to just see all the different takes. But like, one of his takes was like, he has like, I forget what analogy he used, but in my brain, I'm picturing like lily pads, like on a pond, where you have like types of content you can go to at any time, and you know that like you could probably, or you have a reasonable % chance of making a banger. But every once in a while, you have to like venture off and try new things. And if it doesn't work, come back to your home base. I think that's maybe what he called it, like a home base. And so like, I would honestly, I find your natural talking and natural, the questions you ask, your perspectives and takes, naturally talking, I find them more interesting than your videos. But then again, that might be podcasts. The first time we met, we just did like a FaceTime, or I think it was just like a FaceTime or a Zoom meeting. Yeah. I think, at least to me, because remember, some people like packaging because they don't really understand the space that much. Some people like nuance. Like, you do well with nuance. You're a very interesting human being. You have way more. To me, I like you unpackaged than packaged, is what I'm saying. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Like I think your perspectives are interesting. I like your off the cuff thoughts. I like seeing you think about things. I feel like people have told me before, they're just like, oh, that's such a good take. And it's something that I don't even realize is a take. There might be so much good content inside your brain that you could just make. And you were testing that kind of walking on the street style content recently. I wonder if there's just like, I think you have to keep trying those things and seeing stuff work. So like, you can add different things to your home base. I haven't done this consciously, but I showed you that my green screen comes up. I do green screen content, but then I also have, for videos that I feel like are more conceptual, that I need a script, I have a teleprompter. I'm looking through a nice camera through a teleprompter, and then I can just send it to my editor. And I'm realizing that's its own style of video, where I'm looking directly in the camera. And then I have one where I'm in front of a green screen hacking with tools. And those are kind of like my two home bases. That like, whenever this stops working, I just throw up the green screen. I'm like, YOLO, let's make some content. And I feel like that could actually be like a healthy thing for you, because there's this like hopelessness that comes with making content one way. And it's just like, it doesn't work for months. I've been there, bro. Like, I've been there where you're like stuck at 50,000 views. It sucks. And I think it's always healthy to have this thing that you can hop to, be like, you know what? People aren't vibing with it. Let's either go to one that I know works or test out new things. And so that's the one thing. And don't be afraid to unpackage yourself and get away from that visual brand perspective. Or don't take my advice, but I would suggest to just like be like, just let yourself free. I would suggest let yourself free and just talk, and like people want to know who you are, or like your perspectives, in my opinion.
So some of that's the format, like the let's say highly produced split screen format. I definitely don't go away from that much. I've tried to make like one-offs here and there, and then if they don't work, I go back to it. But I agree that I think the more unpackaged, well, for me, I hate editing. So like I would love the unpackaged where I could edit less. Like that would be amazing. What I struggle with is how do I fit in the most high value stuff into the 90 seconds? And what do I do with it visually? Like
what if your perception of what is high value isn't true? I get this wrong every time. I think I know what is high value and I start throwing out random stuff. That's when I put out that video on the globe.engineer, that app that like takes it all out. I almost didn't post that. I was like, this video is stupid. No one's going to care. 10 million views. And it's like, you find that like little perspectives, little nuggets of your wisdom are valuable, but they're so second nature to you. Like, Justin Feinberg, actually, he talked about this in a video, and I agree. He's like, don't post things that are like hard for you. Post things that are obvious to you. And what's obvious to you, your takes on just like the industry, so much of what you think is just like second nature, obvious about the industry is just not. And so if you just took your camera and recorded for an hour and had a list of questions that either people asked, or get AI, explain your whole situation, get AI to come up with 20 questions, read the question as if someone answered and just respond. And then throw it into something like Descript, and then just see what happens. Like, see if you make it a full screen, like where there's no editing and all you could do is like add subtitles. See if any one of them like resonates with you. Like you're like, oh, you know what? This is actually an interesting take. And so I think there's some exercises you could do to like get out of your, just kind of like get out of your normal habits. Yeah.
I agree. I really want to make like green screen, lower frills. Like Oren's a good friend of mine. The way Oren makes content, where it's just like him, green screen, he has like a picture in the background. Every sentence he changes the picture, but like it's very low frills. But his videos do well. So
wait, who is this? Oren?
Or like Oren Meets World. You ever heard of Oren Meets World? He makes like brand content, like about clothing.
Yeah. Okay. I follow him only because you've talked about him, I think.
Oh, I've talked about him. Yeah. He's dope.
Oh, no. Yeah. This guy's dope. This guy's dope, actually. 100%.
So that the format is one piece. What about the topic matter? Do you find that the wide range of things I cover is compelling to you liking my personal brand, or that because what's happening is I'm trying to play the what then game, right? So like, let's say I make anything I want that interests me. Okay, what then? Well, then the people that follow me are not following me for a topic. They're following me for like me, I guess, kind of broad. What then? Well, then it becomes really hard to build a product that I sell to that audience because they're not topic specific. What then? Well, then it becomes really hard for brands to pay me to make a video because like for you, it's very easy. If they're an AI company, they want to pay you. For me, it's like, well, I talk about AI and I can have videos go viral in AI, but I'm also talking about the masters. So like, does Adobe want to pay 20 grand to me when my next video is or my last video is about the masters? I don't know. Mm-hmm. So like I start playing the what then game, and the more broad I am, the less clear it is what the value capture looks like. And so that's what I'm getting in my head about this, about like, where do I focus on one thing? What would it be if I did, this is the constant battle in my head for the last 3 months.
It's hard because I don't know your true values. I don't know what your interest, like if you took all your interests and plotted them on a graph, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how much you like content creation. I don't know how much you like AI. I don't know how much you like entrepreneurship. So that's ultimately a question for your, like, it says shitty answer, but it's a question for yourself. Like ask yourself, if I could make twice as much money niching down, but I niched down into something I wasn't passionate about, like, it's like, would that be worth it to you?
I wouldn't do it.
Me either. Like obviously I'm lucky enough where like before this, like AI stole my heart. It sounds so so cheesy that like AI captured my attention so deeply prior to any monetization thoughts. And I knew, and it was very nice to know like the first 6 months I was making content was the most beautiful thing ever because I had an inbound email thing. I checked my email once every 2 weeks. I woke up from 8 in the morning to 8 at night. It was like the first 4 hours I'm messing with these tools, coming up with an idea for a video. The rest of the day I'm making a video. And that was 12 hours of work. And I loved that time because I wasn't thinking about any of what then. That is a dangerous game to play because if I had have done the what then and created a product after getting 50,000 followers and created a newsletter and was constantly shilling these newsletters, I'm convinced that it would have just taken away from the magic of whatever it was that I was doing. So it's such a hard balance. And like, honestly, follow your intuition and like, I wouldn't worry too much about that. I feel like you might be overanalyzing the what then. I feel like that might be an overanalysis in my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair. It's a fair point.
Sorry if that doesn't help. But like,
no, I mean, I agree. It is very individual about like how your interests stack up. For me, it's like I get really bored when I look at one thing only. I like being scattered in terms of my interests are all over the place. And I do strongly believe that like if you're going to endure with longevity, you have to actually like it. You can't not like it. And for me, I love going down the rabbit hole, finding something interesting that nobody's seen, taking that complex idea, simplifying the package down. I love that. I hate everything else. So like I'm fine pushing the camera and pressing record and intonating 5 different times per sentence. I'm fine doing that. I hate editing so much. And I've only gotten this far based on pure brute force, me head down being like, no one's going to do this for me. I have to do it. And so because of that, I'm like, all right, well, if half the day I don't enjoy, I'm trying to get out of that. And to get out of that, I need some cash flow to pay for, to operationalize things. And so that's how I get to the what then of like, all right, how do I build cash flow predictably that isn't more time away from the things I do like, et cetera. So that's how the framing, I think a lot of creators have that same dilemma, which is like, they like part of it, not all of it.
Era. It's like the brute force era where everything feels like brute force. And like your only goal is to get out of that. And it's like, as soon as it's so easy to think like, oh, as soon as I get out of that, then my whole life is going to open up, and like you can start doing all these things, which to some degree is true. It's hard.
It's hard. I don't think there's an answer, but I definitely wanted to hear your take.
Yeah.
Dope.
It's hard.
All right. Yeah. Anyone listening still, it's hard. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. I love this conversation. It was very fun.